Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has landed in Turkey for talks to try and revive U.S. peace talks and to end Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He is meeting today with the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff. Peace negotiations stalled after several rounds of Russian-Ukraine talks in Istanbul this year failed to yield a breakthrough. Kyiv is hoping Washington will be able to push Russia to the negotiating table, including by imposing sanctions. Well, we're going to talk more about that now with political analyst and Russia expert Alexandra Filippenko, who joins me from Vilnius in Lithuania. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. What do you think Zelensky's main goal is with this visit today?
First of all, thank you for having me. Well, the idea right now is to re-anchor Turkey as a diplomatic intermediary. We've heard some negotiations happening in Turkey previously. We've heard about that. But most importantly, and I think number one of importance, is the fact that what we learned from Axios recently. Axios reported that according to their sources close to the White House, there are actually talks happening between Steve Witkoff and the Russian side. As we know, the meeting between Marco Rubio, the state secretary, and the national security advisor, and Sergei Lavrov, the minister of foreign affairs of Russia, was canceled in Budapest. And subsequently, the meeting between President Trump and President Putin was canceled in Budapest. And as of now, we didn't know anything about any contacts. Marco Rubio, being at G7 summit, he answered reporters' questions saying that, well, there are contacts, but not on my level, on the level of embassies. But now from Axios, we learned that actually Steve Witkoff is continuing his diplomatic efforts, most probably with Kirill Dmitriev, because Kirill Dmitriev, a very close contact of Vladimir Putin, a person who is personally close to Vladimir Putin, and his, let's say, envoy, the unofficial envoy of Russia, he immediately went to Miami to meet with Steve Witkoff as soon as we learned that the meeting in Budapest would not happen. So now we understand that there are some diplomatic efforts from the Russian side and some private diplomatic efforts from the American side. So most probably for Volodymyr Zelensky and for the Ukrainian side, it's extremely important right now not to lose that time and not to lose those connections with the American side. So they need to rebuild leverage. They don't have leverage right now. They don't have a diplomatic leverage. So this would be a symbolic diplomatic victory that Volodymyr Zelensky really needs right now.
So one thing Zelensky is hoping for is that for Washington to push Russia to the negotiating table by imposing sanctions. What's the likelihood that'll happen?
Well, that's a big question, because what we've heard about sanctions regarding Rosneft and Lukoil would hit Russia immensely. But President Trump first gave one timeline for those sanctions to come into effect, and then he moved that timeline. The sanctions were supposed to already come into effect right now. No, now the timeline is pushed up to December. So we see that the American side, if we talk in President Trump's terms, he has the cards, and he showed his cards, but he is ready to talk to Russia. He is ready to, let's say, postpone those sanctions if he sees peace efforts from the Russian side. And right now, for the Kremlin, for Russia, it's very important to show that they are engaging into negotiations, and not in order not to be sanctioned, because actually the economic situation in Russia is dire, and those sanctions really hit Russia hard. So this visit really matters now for Volodymyr Zelensky, because he wants to promote the idea of sanctions that it looks like President Trump is not ready to support as of now, because he sees that there are diplomatic efforts. There are presumably some talks between Russia and the United States.
Of course, all of this is coming as the situation on the ground is getting worse for the Ukrainians. Their military positions weakening, especially as Russia now looks poised to take the strategic city of Pokrovsk. What's your feeling about what's happening on the ground, and if Ukraine really does have a leg to stand on in these negotiations?
That's exactly the point. That's the most important thing that you outlined right now. Russian forces are tightening the grip on Pokrovsk. The Donetsk defense is now critical for Ukraine. Ukrainian defense lines are actually overstretched, and air defense is overstretched, and there is not enough rotary in the army. And for Russia, it's the momentum. Russia believes that taking Pokrovsk will shift that negotiation baseline, I would put it this way. So Moscow aims to demonstrate that those battlefield realities are in their favor. And as we know, again, what we know about President Trump from his first term and from his almost year in power, that he might be ready to push Ukraine to come to negotiating table with just right now before things get worse. And maybe he would be ready to give into some Russia's demands. And we know that Russia is demanding the whole of Donetsk and way more territory that it controls right now. And President Trump is usually ready to support the winning side. So for Zelensky, it's very important to seize the momentum right now, because militarily, it's a precarious situation right now for Ukraine, because Russian forces are advancing slowly, very, very slowly, but surely advancing in the Donetsk region.
Indeed, and winter is on the way. What does the Ukrainian army need to survive another winter at war and try and end this fighting for good?
Well, the most important thing, of course, is energy, and Russia is attacking Ukraine's energy resources. And right now, we saw that Ukraine has enough long-range missiles to attack the Russian side. And not only the American-made missiles, not only the ATACMS, but not the Tomahawks, of course, that everyone talked about for so long. But Ukraine made weapons. Ukraine made long-range weapons. And Volodymyr Zelensky is making it clear that if Russia hits Ukrainian energy resources, Ukraine will hit Russia's. So they are trying to put that pressure on the Russian side to make them stop hitting civilian targets in Ukraine. But we don't see any sign of Russia stopping. We don't see any sign of Kremlin being ready to come to that negotiating table. So the most important thing for Ukraine are long-range missiles right now.
Alexandra, thank you for that. That's a political analyst, Alexandra Filippenko, speaking to me from Vilnius.